Most people never notice the quiet man who cleans the floors at the end of the day. In the towering glass office building on Marlin Street, the janitor was a middle-aged man named Laron Vale. Every evening, just as the busy workers packed their laptops and rushed toward the elevators, Laron arrived pushing a simple cleaning cart. He moved quietly through the halls, wiping desks, emptying trash bins, and polishing the shiny floors until they reflected the ceiling lights. To most people in the building, Laron was invisible. They passed him without greeting him, speaking over him as if he were part of the furniture. Some even complained loudly about the messes he cleaned up. "Make sure you get this spot," one employee would say without even looking at him. Another would laugh and whisper to a colleague, "I wonder if he even understands what we do here." Laron always nodded politely, responding with a calm, respectful voice. "Of course, I'll take care of it." He never argued, never complained, and never corrected anyone. But behind his quiet smile was a man who noticed everything. He listened carefully to every conversation and every careless remark. And the truth about Laron Vale was something no one in that building would have ever guessed. The largest company renting space in the building was Horizon Axis Consulting, a fast-growing corporate firm filled with ambitious professionals. Their employees dressed sharply and spoke loudly about deals, promotions, and investments. One of the most confident voices in the office belonged to Davin Cross, a senior manager who enjoyed reminding others how successful he was. Davin often stayed late, pacing the hallway while discussing contracts on his phone. One evening, he nearly collided with Laron pushing his cart near the elevator. Without looking up, Davin snapped, "Watch where you're going." Laron quickly stepped aside. "Sorry, sir," he said calmly. Davin rolled his eyes and walked away as if the janitor barely existed. Moments like that happened almost every night. Some workers ignored Laron completely, while others treated him like an inconvenience. Only a few people ever spoke to him kindly. But Laron remained calm and patient, cleaning every office carefully, as though it were his own. One person who occasionally noticed Laron was the front desk receptionist, a thoughtful young woman named Taryn Soul. Taryn had a quiet personality and often observed the behavior of people around her. One evening, she stayed late finishing paperwork and noticed Laron carefully arranging chairs in a conference room that employees had left in a mess. "You don't have to fix everything so perfectly," Taryn said with a small smile. Laron paused and looked at her kindly. "A place where people work deserves respect," he replied gently. Taryn studied him with curiosity. "You don't sound like someone who has spent his life cleaning offices," she said. Laron simply smiled and returned to his work. Something about him felt different. His posture was confident, his voice calm, and his eyes observant. Around the same time, the building had recently been purchased by a mysterious new owner. Management had informed all the companies renting space that the new landlord preferred to stay private. Rumors quickly spread through the offices. Some employees claimed the owner was a wealthy investor from overseas. Others believed it was a massive real estate corporation quietly buying property across the city. Davin Cross laughed whenever the topic came up. "Whoever owns this place must be making easy money," he said loudly in the break room one afternoon. "Imagine sitting somewhere collecting rent while everyone else does the work." Several coworkers laughed along with him. Outside the room, Laron slowly pushed his cart down the hallway, silently hearing every word. Despite the noise and arrogance around him, Laron continued his work with quiet patience. Each evening, he polished the marble floors in the lobby until they shone like mirrors. He wiped fingerprints from glass doors and carefully arranged chairs in meeting rooms. To him, the building was not just another workplace. Every corner held memories. He had once stood on the empty construction site years earlier, watching workers pour the first concrete foundation. Long before Horizon Axis Consulting rented their offices, Laron Vale had been the founder of a successful property development company called Vale Urban Holdings. Starting with a small construction team and a single truck, he spent 20 years building commercial properties across the city. Marlin Tower, the very building he now cleaned every night, had been one of his proudest projects. He had personally overseen every stage of its construction. After decades of running his company, Laron eventually stepped away from the spotlight. Many people believed he had retired or disappeared from business entirely. In reality, he continued investing quietly through private companies. Recently, he had repurchased several of his old properties, including Marlin Tower. But instead of announcing himself as the landlord, he chose a different path. He wanted to see how people behaved when they believed the owner was far away and invisible. Working as a janitor allowed him to observe everything without anyone noticing. He saw which employees respected others and which ones believed status made them superior. Some people were kind, many were not. And every night, he quietly learned more about the character of the tenants renting space inside his building. Taryn's soul remained one of the few people who treated him like a human being. One evening, she handed him a cup of tea while he cleaned near the front desk. "You work harder than most people in this building," she said. Laron accepted the tea gratefully. "Thank you, Taryn." She looked at him thoughtfully. "Sometimes I feel like this building has secrets." Laron smiled gently. "Every place does." Meanwhile, Davin Cross continued showing little respect for the quiet janitor. He often left his office messy, assuming someone else would clean it perfectly. One night, he tossed a stack of papers into the trash and said loudly, "Make sure you get everything. I like my office spotless." Laron simply nodded. Of course. Weeks later, an announcement arrived from building management. The mysterious owner wanted to meet all company executives for an important discussion. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning in the largest conference room. Davin Cross shrugged when he heard the news. "Probably some boring rent discussion," he joked confidently. On Friday morning, the conference room filled with managers and executives from several companies. Everyone expected to meet a powerful real estate investor. Davin sat near the front of the room checking messages on his phone while others chatted quietly. The door opened slowly. The quiet janitor walked into the room. Several people looked confused. Davin frowned impatiently. "Hey, this meeting is for executives," he said. Laron calmly walked to the front of the room. He placed a folder on the table. Then he looked around the room, at every face watching him. "Good morning," Laron said calmly. "My name is Laron Vale, and I am the owner of this building." Silence filled the room. Some executives stared in disbelief. Others glanced at each other, unsure if they had heard correctly. Davin Cross slowly lowered his phone, his confident expression disappearing. Laron opened the folder and continued speaking calmly. "For the past 6 months I have worked here quietly, so I could understand the culture of the companies renting space in my building." He paused, letting his words settle in the stunned room. Some people showed kindness and respect. Others treated those they believed were beneath them as if they were invisible. His eyes briefly rested on Davin before moving across the room. "Success is not measured by titles or expensive suits," he continued. "It is measured by how we treat people when we believe no one important is watching." No one spoke. The truth of his words hung heavily in the air. Davin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Laron closed the folder and gave a calm smile. "The building will continue to welcome companies that value professionalism and respect," he said. "Because every person in this building, from the CEO to the janitor, deserves dignity." The meeting ended with the room still silent, but the lesson would remain with them long after they left. And from that day forward, no one in Marlin Tower ever looked at the quiet janitor the same way again. After the meeting ended, the executives slowly stood from their seats, but no one rushed out the way they usually did after a corporate discussion. The room felt different now, heavy with embarrassment, reflection, and quiet realization. Laron Vale remained standing calmly near the front table while several managers whispered to each other. Some avoided eye contact with him completely. Others looked down at their shoes, remembering how they had walked past him countless evenings without even offering a greeting. Davin Cross, however, looked the most uncomfortable. The confident smile he usually wore had completely disappeared. For the first time since anyone in the company could remember, Davin seemed unsure of what to say. Eventually, he stood and slowly approached Laron. His voice was noticeably quieter than usual. "Mr. Vale, I didn't realize," he began, but the words faded before he could finish the sentence. Laron simply looked at him calmly. "You didn't realize I mattered," Laron replied gently. The statement was not angry. It was simply honest. Davin lowered his eyes. Around them, other executives quietly left the room, carrying with them a lesson none of them had expected to learn that morning. Later that evening, as employees prepared to leave work, something unusual happened throughout the building. People who had previously ignored the janitor suddenly paused when they saw him. Some greeted him politely. Others nodded respectfully. A few even apologized awkwardly for past behavior. Taryn's soul approached Laron near the front desk with a warm smile. "I knew there was something different about you," she said softly. Laron chuckled. "You were one of the few who saw me as a person before today." Taryn shrugged modestly. "Everyone deserves that." Word about the meeting spread quickly through every office floor. Employees who had never attended the meeting heard the story from coworkers, and many were shocked. The quiet janitor they had ignored for months was actually the owner of the entire building. But Laron's purpose had never been to embarrass anyone. His goal had simply been to remind people of something many successful professionals often forget: character matters more than status. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere inside Marlin Tower slowly changed. Managers became more thoughtful about how they treated support staff. Employees greeted the cleaning crew by name. Small acts of respect began appearing in places where arrogance had once been common. Davin Cross himself made the most visible change. One evening he approached Laron in the hallway while the janitor pushed his familiar cleaning cart. "Good evening, Mr. Vale," he said sincerely. "And thank you for the lesson." Laron smiled calmly. "Lessons only matter if we grow from them," he replied. As Davin walked away, he realized something important. The quiet janitor he once ignored had shown him more about leadership than any executive seminar ever could. And from that day forward, the story of the invisible janitor who owned the entire building became a quiet reminder in Marlin Tower. True success is not measured by power or position, but by how we treat people when we believe no one is watching. And that's the lesson from today's story. No matter how difficult life becomes, determination and courage can lead to success. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe to Success Folktales, and share this message with someone who needs it. Because here, every story has a lesson, and every struggle can lead to success.